Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. Today, I'd like to talk about three things: deductive reasoning, critical thinking, and life experience. And if you can somehow combine all three of those together, that's a thumbs up. That's a recipe for seeing the truth. It's the antidote for poppycock. It creates vision in the land of the blind. You know, they say that in the land of the blind, the Cyclops is king. But if you can have critical thinking, deductive reasoning, and life experiences, you're not a Cyclops. You actually have eyes in the back of your head. You have eyes in 360-degree radial pattern, and you are running the show. You move to the highest level. Anyway, so what I wanted to tell you is I come from an accounting, finance, and auditing background, people, and in order to survive in that world where you're under a lot of pressure to produce results fast. In other words, I was told on my first day of work that my supervisors would be expecting accuracy, but not 100% accuracy. It does not need to be 100%, but it needs to be tip-top accurate. Like, they wouldn't really give me a number on that, but 90% accurate would be fine. They want it to be generally accurate, but they want it quick and fast. So, for example, to clarify the situation, I said, "What if I made it 100% accurate, but it took a month?" And they said, "Well, no, we'd rather have it be 80% accurate and have it in 24 hours." So, in other words, speed and delivery was sort of more important than accuracy. They do want accuracy, but they want it quick. In other words, they don't feel that if you can get information to them quickly, that it loses its relevance. They can't do anything with the information if they don't have it in hand. So it was sort of an ambiguous area that you must learn as a young person coming out of university. You had to sort of learn on your own. They just throw you to the wolves with not a lot of supervision. I should tell you, there's little to no supervision. They select you based on your grades, based on how well you passed the CPA exam or how well you excelled in your finance and mathematics classes in university. See, because that's a technique to test deductive reasoning skills, and that's really who the auditing firms want and financial firms want. They want people who can solve problems mathematically or word problems, algebraic type word problems, people who can break down polynomials, break down complex formulas into simplest terms. Remember, it's called breaking down polynomials into their simplest terms. You've heard that before in algebra class. That's what we're talking about. And most people cannot do it. Let's be honest. Most people can't do it. And that's a problem when you're living in a invisible hand controlled society with a media of fake news. So that your main primary sources of information, if you're not living in the neighborhood of a crime, or you have no experience with demolition, or if you have no experience with bayoneting people with a professional bayonet, or if you're a hunter and all you know about is the buck knife, you see, you need to have a breadth of experience. That's the key word here, is breadth of experience. Because if you don't, all you have is Walter Cronkite and the CBS, Masonic Evil Eye, or you got Rachel Maddow from Stanford University and Castro Valley, and you have, Bill O'Reilly and, Ted Koppel and David Brinkley and Chet Huntley. Any one of a number of liar, liar, pants on fire purveyors of poppycock. That's what you got as your sources. You're never going to solve anything with those knuckleheads in your life. The best thing to do is just turn them off. Just turn the switch off. Or push the button off. All right, so I wanted to really emphasize the fact that I do have good deductive reasoning skills, and fortunately for me, because of my business, I have clients that led me into the industries that are most interesting to me, besides banking and finance and shadow banking and money laundering and how to use money laundering apparatuses, from a pizza parlor to a cinema theater to a strip club, burlesque, or to a casino, for example, to a symphony endowment fund, or the organ fund for a symphony house, which I personally audited. Yeah. And who was on the donor list? Well, I got to see that. That was information not available to the general public. And it's not too different than the list of who's in the Jeffrey Epstein black book, right? Who's in the Abigail Folger's black book? And how come that isn't publicly available? Did you notice that? I mean, I heard Ed Durston's name is in the Abigail Folger black book. But you see, if you had access to the Abigail Folger black book, right, then you would know exactly what she was doing for the last 18 months of her life. Now, it wouldn't tell you who killed her, who murdered her, who stabbed her 28 times with a bayonet, because I believe at least 3 men did that. It's not going to tell you that, right? If you had Angela Lansbury's signed permission slip so that her 16-year-old daughter Deidre could hang out with Susan Atkins at the swimming pool over at 13158 Chandler Boulevard, that's not going to tell you who stabbed Sharon Tate with a bayonet. It's not going to answer that question, right? I mean, it's just sort of interesting, but it fits into the category of who cares, doesn't matter, red herring. It could be a made-up story. It could be poppycock. But in any case, it is a diversion. If it's true, it's a diversion, and if it's false, it's a diversion. Now, that's important, people, because if you're spending time trying to figure out Angela Lansbury, who just passed away at age 96, who's totally CIA controlled her whole career, and if you don't think that is irrelevant, then I don't know what to say, because here's the thing. If you want to know who can handle a professional military bayonet, then you need to study military operations training, or you need to go out and buy a dozen pigs and try to kill them with a buck knife. This was entered into the Charlie Manson murder case, and this weapon was not used. This weapon was not used. So if you don't believe me, I double and triple and quadruple dare you. Go get a dozen pigs and try to stab them 154 times with a buck knife, okay? And kill all those pigs and make them dead, just like at My Lai, right? Right? Didn't they write that in Karina LaBianca's home? Death to pigs? I bet they did. They wrote death to pigs on the wall. And then they wrote Helter Skelter, misspelled, on the refrigerator in Corina LaBianca's home, which for 52 years they've been telling you it's Leno LaBianca's home. No, it's not. It's his mother's home. And he's temporarily staying there because he was living in the Walt Disney Mansion at 4053 Woking Way in Griffith Park below the Hollywood sign, right? And he sold the house, so he had to move out. So he moved into his mother's house, whilst he's purchasing a ranch in San Diego County, specifically in Vista, a horse farm, because Leno wants to raise horses, and he likes to race horses. He owns, at the time of his death, he owned 9 racehorses. He had 11 racehorses, but one had to be put down because it broke its leg, and then he sold another one. So that left 9. He had 9 racehorses that he owned. But he wanted more, and he wanted to have his own horse farm. That's the only reason he was in that house. But I double dare you to use this weapon, which is a very menacing professional weapon. It's only single-sided, so it will not match up with the medical examination reports of the Los Angeles medical office, the coroner's office. It won't match up. But that's not the point. People don't care about what the facts are. They don't care. But I just think if you believe in your head that you could kill 7 pigs, because we had 7 victims at Cielo Drive and Waverly. So if you think that a buck knife was used, because that's what Judge Older allowed into the Manson case, if you believe that, go do it. I doubled it. You won't be able to do it. You won't be able to kill 7 pigs. And number 2 is that the wounds won't match up with the photographs that are available from the coroner report, because the wounds match up with the M7, which was not introduced in the murder trial, because this is a military weapon. Anyway, that's called deductive reasoning, critical thinking. And if you can't understand what I just said, that means you have no chance of understanding how Sharon Tate was murdered. Never mind why she was murdered. I mean, there are multiple reasons that she wasn't murdered. And of course, let's always remember that in order to get whacked, when you are working for CIA, when you are working for them, you wouldn't think that they would whack you, except that they have an oath of secrecy to keep your lips zipped. Number one, secrecy. Secrecy. All the Apollo astronauts had to take an oath of secrecy. All Black Ops people take an oath of secrecy. William Egan Colby took an oath of secrecy. All the CIA directors take an oath of secrecy. All the deputy directors take an oath of secrecy. Evel Younger took an oath of secrecy. All the private bankers take an oath of secrecy. If you want to be the president of the World Bank, or you want to be the president of Chase Manhattan or Citibank or Bank of America, you're going to take an oath of secrecy, right? And you're also going to take an oath of obedience. Just like you're a Jesuit priest, they take an oath of obedience. They take an oath of poverty and chastity, and they also take an oath of world vision or world mission. World mission. You know, like Agenda 21, right? That's a cult. That's a cult. If you find yourself taking an oath of obedience and you find yourself following a world mission, you're in a cult. Absolutely, you're in a cult. Now, if you wear a face diaper, right, and you recite mantra that's given to you, right? For example, I'll give you an oath that is chanted in San Francisco. It's called, let me get this straight because I'm not really in the club, but it goes something like this. Weaving spiders come not here. Weaving spiders come not here. Meaning that spiders weave webs, and webs lead to entanglements. You know, like a girlfriend, like a wife, like children, like responsibilities. You can't be a bohemian if you're entangled with women and children and responsibilities. That's not very bohemian, right? Which is do whatever you want whenever you want. Of course, you got to be wealthy, because you still got to buy food and have a house and pay your gardener, right? So owls eat spiders. They kill spiders, which is why the owl is the mascot for the Bohemian Club, right? It's like the Wizard of Oz. The Moloch owl, the Moloch lion, the flames coming out the nostrils. That's banking. That's world banking. That's international banking. The Wizard of Oz, featuring Judy Garland as Dorothy. And what's the scarecrow? Right? No brain, no critical thinking, no deductive reasoning. You know how easy it is to control a scarecrow? It's very easy. A scarecrow has no brain. Scarecrow. That's a symbol in the movie Wizard of Oz. The scarecrow means brainless peasant. All right? Then there's the Tin Man. What does the Tin Man symbolize? Has no heart, has no soul, right? Has no empathy. It's like a lot of people don't have a heart, don't have a soul, and perhaps at the higher levels. And then, of course, we have the Cowardly Lion. And what does the Cowardly Lion symbolizes? He symbolizes COVID. He symbolizes the COVID program. He symbolizes Phoenix program. He symbolizes the Phoenix My Lai massacre. He symbolizes the fake, phony Manson cult family mendacity story told for 52 years. That's the Cowardly Lion. Only cowards believe that story. Only a coward would believe that Charlie Manson, with no bank account, with no employment, with no parole officer supervision, but never kept alone, living in multi-million-dollar homes, like the CBS Will Rogers home, 14400 Sunset Boulevard, in Pacific Palisades, where Arnold Schwarzenegger now lives, in that zip code. spending time at the Malibu gated colony, which is a CIA-controlled place, living with Brian Wilson, the founder of the Beach Boys, living in his home on Bellagio Drive, below Art Linkletter, in Bel Air, living there for a month and a half, recording 8 hours of music with the Wrecking Crew, putting his poetry to professional orchestra music on Santa Monica Boulevard at Gold Star Recording Studios. Charlie Manson. I mean, he could have been part of the Monkees. He could have been part of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. He could have been in the Beach Boys. Charlie Manson could have been in the Beach Boys. They recorded some of his songs. I believe they recorded a minimum of 2 songs. I heard that they recorded 4 of his songs. But in any case, I believe that at least one of his songs is actually on one of their albums. So that's pretty impressive for an unemployed homeless guy, right? A homeless guy with nice homes. Lived in Canoga Park at 21019 Street, Gresham Street, 21019 Gresham Street, Canoga Park. Lived there for about 9 months. Anyway, nobody, and I mean nobody, was afraid of Charlie Manson. But if you don't have the deductive reasoning skills to understand that homeless people with no bank accounts that seem to get around with a taxi service called Harold True and others, like Doris Day's son, Terry Melcher, or Greg Jacobson, Terry Melcher's partner with Columbia Records, that's who produced the Manson family. Terry Melcher and Greg Jacobson, with help from Phil Kaufman, the Rolling Stones road manager, and Harold True, who was in World Vision, sent to Ethiopia, which, if you haven't figured that out, that's a CIA operation. World Charity Vision. World Vision. World Vision. What do you think that means? Is that like Agenda 21? Let's try out some experiments in Ethiopia where nobody cares, and then we can try them back later in the United States when it's too late. All of the things that are happening in the United States have been tested in Vietnam, in Ethiopia, in Somalia, in other countries, in the Congo, in Latin America, in Guatemala. They've destroyed indigenous peoples throughout the world. Been tried in California. I mean, California history is totally fake. Californians don't know how the heck we got here. The gold rush, that was a controlled media event. And then what happened to all the Native American people, the Indians that were living here? Well, they sort of got disappeared. They've been disappeared. There's a few casinos. We have a few Indian casinos throughout California. But there are more Father Junipero Franciscan missions, 21, than you can find Indian casinos. I don't know if we have 21 casinos in California, but we might. But anyway, my point is that deductive reasoning is critical. In algebra and in accounting CPA exam, certified public accountants exam, they give you these word problems to describe like a real life situation, to test you to see if you can solve the problem, right? And I would look at it as it's a minimum information problem where they give you the minimum amount of data points or information that you need to solve the problem. Then they give you an overwhelming amount of poppycock, irrelevant, red herring information, which it's not information because it's not relevant, but it's data. And typically on the CPA exam, a word problem would have 50% to 2/3 of the word story would be red herring, poppycock, not necessary to solve the problem. And you see what the examiners are trying to seek out is an accounting student who can disregard what is not necessary to solve the problem and know exactly what is required to solve the problem, and then just ferret out amongst all the data, the information from the poppycock red herring. That's what you have in the Manson case. That's what you have in the John Kennedy assassination, which is, those are the two top conspiracy plots that have been hidden by using poppycock. The two top. is John F. Kennedy, and I think that the Charlie Manson Mendaci actually has surpassed it in terms of the amount of fake authors and fake news articles and fake phony facts and circumstances and poppycock bald-faced lies and suborned perjury. I think the Manson case is number one and the JFK case is number two. Then you can work your way back to 9/11, Pearl Harbor, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, for example, by John Wilkes Booth. I mean, we haven't got the facts of that case correct. You could get into the William Colby assassination that nobody talks about. You could talk about the Erin Valenti assassination that nobody talks about. There's no poppycock involved with the Erin Valenti case, murdered at age 33 in Menlo Park. There's no discussion of that. There's no Charlie Manson Mendaci. They don't talk about it at all. And the Zodiac case, yeah, there's been some fake authors, and there's been authors that talk about, the chaos of that. But there's been no one that's, solved that case. It remains unsolved. I believe deliberately on purpose. In fact, none of these cases have been solved. We haven't solved the Sharon Tate murder. We have not solved the John Kennedy murder. Who pulled the trigger? Don't know. Who stabbed Sharon Tate? I don't know. Neither do you. You don't know. We know it wasn't Charlie Manson. That's a fact. I mean, even Evel Younger, Aaron Stovich agree Charlie Manson didn't do it. I mean, that's what's so comical to me is how many people think that Charlie Manson killed Sharon Tate when the prosecutors didn't believe it. The Los Angeles police never believed it. They never even connected Charlie Manson in the first place. There is zero evidence to tie anyone who's in the so-called Manson orbit to the murders. None. Just suborned perjury, but that's not a direct link. Suborned perjury is not independent-minded, critical thinking proof. Doesn't prove anything. Anyone can say anything about anyone, especially when you have a gun to your head and they say, I'm going to charge you with the murder unless you say he did it. People don't get it. They don't get it. Listen, unless you spend time in jail, unless you've been arrested, booked, arraigned in a courtroom, had bail posted, figured out how to get out of the jail without having access to a telephone, because guess what? You don't have access to a telephone. You're like, I'm entitled to a telephone call. That's what they say on in real life, they'll put you in a concrete closet with a toilet that doesn't work, that doesn't flush, that's overflowing, and you'll sit in there for 20 hours with no telephone, right? You're lucky to have 20 minutes access to a telephone every 24 hours. And you're going to have to wait in line because other people may want to use the only phone that works, and you'll be out there competing with 11 other people that may want to use that phone. So when they say that you have the right to a telephone call, which by the way, you can't leave messages, and you have no cell phone, and you have no directory, so you have to have memorized a number that you're going to call. The reality is the only place you can call is a bail bondsman, and you could ask the bail bondsman to call the people that you want to know that you're in the jail, because no one's going to know you're in the jail. No one is going to know. They'll just assume you were kidnapped and you're missing. I'm serious. If you have a dog go missing, it'll turn up on the website for the local county animal control faster than you'll ever show up on a website to be in the jail. Which, by the way, as far as I know, they don't post the names of the people who are in the jail. They don't post it. So there's no way for your loved one to know that you're in the jail because the county doesn't tell anyone who's in that concrete temple of doom. All right, so anyway, what I wanted to emphasize to you today is that if you want to navigate COVID and public safety and you want to understand the Kennedy assassinations, plural, and understand that John Frankenheimer, the director of the Manchurian Candidate, drove Robert Kennedy and his wife to the Ambassador Hell, which is a dump. It's a dump of a hotel. There's a reason why Robert Kennedy wasn't staying at the Ambassador Hotel, because it's a dump and it's in a bad part of Los Angeles. It's in a ghetto part of Los Angeles. Run-down part of Los Angeles. We had the Watts riots. It's not that far from where the Watts riots were. No one's going to stay there. You'd stay in Beverly Hills. You'd stay in Bel Air. That's where you'd stay. You'd stay at the Century Plaza Hotel. You'd stay at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. You'd stay at the Roosevelt Hotel. You wouldn't stay at the Ambassador Hotel, which hadn't been remodeled in over 22 years. It's a dump. No one's staying there. And Robert Kennedy didn't spend any time with his campaign workers that might have been around at midnight. He just gave a real quick, 2-minute or less acceptance speech and then went and got his head blown off in the kitchen. You notice he didn't walk into the audience and shake hands and sign autographs. No, he wanted to get the heck out of there ASAP and get back to Malibu and work on his suntan. That was his motivation. But unfortunately, he was murdered in the kitchen, as he was planned to. He didn't even want to be there. He wanted to stay at Malibu where he knew he wouldn't be assassinated. Because I can't remember the last time anyone got assassinated at Tom Hanks' house. Which is, by the way, it's Tom Hanks' house. That's where he was staying, at Tom Hanks' house. Only back then it was John Frankenheimer's house. It's Tom Hanks' house. Tom Hanks has been missing for almost 3 years now. Going on 3 years, Tom Hanks is missing. Where's Tom Hanks? All right, so deductive reasoning and critical thinking is the ability to understand poppycock and not spend a lot of time with it, and instead focus on GPS coordinates. Where's the address? Where's the murder scene? Where are the homes in close proximity to the murder scene? Who owns those homes? Who has access to those homes? When I say who owns those homes, that's kind of a red flag, because you're not going to be able to find out the real owner of the homes, because they're always owned by straw owners. But if you could get the name of the home and then find out that perhaps they're a lawyer for the Straight Satans, for example, which is the case of where Leno LaBianca was murdered, the house next door at 3267 was owned by a woman whose son was a lawyer for the Straight Satans. See, that's like 3 degrees of separation between the CIA and the owner of the home. It's not a direct link. But look, what's the mathematical probability, people, that an elderly woman owns 2 houses on the lot next to a violent murder scene, and her son is a criminal defense lawyer that represents CIA drug dealers? What's the chance of that happening, that perhaps the CIA might be paying the property taxes on those properties? Or that this woman gets to live there rent-free, right? Because that's provisional ownership. Provisional ownership is where you're the fake owner, that we pretend that you're the owner. Did Frank Zappa really own his home at 2401 Laurel Canyon Boulevard? I don't think so. Nor would he want to live there. It's got a lot of traffic noise. Would Harry Houdini want to live where he lived at 2400 Laurel Canyon Boulevard? I don't think so. I bet he got that house for free. I'll bet he got that house for free. And then when he was done using it, they assigned it to somebody else. Right? John Phillips, Michelle Phillips, Linda Ronstadt, Charles Watson got a house on Wonderland Avenue. Charles Watson, who we never talk about, the guy who allegedly murdered everyone with a bayonet that we never found. We never found the murder weapon. We found this, but this is not a murder weapon. This is just a buck knife. It's not a murder weapon. It's a buck knife. Anyway, I understand why people don't get that Charlie Manson wasn't involved. It's because they get MK Ultra punked into believing into a Hollywood, like Nightmare on Elm Street, scary story that they just want to believe. They want to believe that. I mean, we all know that people love poppycock. They love lies. They want to be lied to. They absolutely want to be lied to. I learned that at age 20 when I was an intern doing my auditing. If you walk into a conference room with a financial statement and you tell everybody that we made a big profit, they don't even care about the details. They want to take you to dinner. They want to buy you a gift. They think you're a super smart accountant. If you walk into that same conference room with the same people and say we lost $1 million, they'll want to hang you in the courtyard. And they're going to tell you to sharpen your pencil, and that maybe we need to get another auditor, that you're not very smart. And again, they don't want to look at the details. They don't want to look at the details, especially when it's bad news, especially when it doesn't support your belief system. All right? So you're like, I don't have any stake in the Sharon Tate murder. I didn't know her. I didn't know Abigail Folger, although I certainly know people who did know her. and I wasn't that far away from her orbit. Now she traveled around and was sent to boarding schools, so the chances of me meeting Abigail Folger were very low. But I know where her mother lived. I know where her father lived in Portola Valley. I know where Piedmont is. I have family there. That's where her mother grew up. I know where her father is buried in the Mountain View Cemetery. I know where her mother is buried at the Holy Cross Catholic Cemetery. I've been there. I've been all over both of those cemeteries. So it's not like I'm completely oblivious to them, but I have no personal stake in it. I understand their indoctrinations. I understand which schools they went to, and I've personally been to those campuses, and I understand what goes on there. And I have family members that were important people at those places, and I know what they're about. So I'm a difficult person to bamboozle. And if you think that I have some false bias that I just want, I'm the only person I know that wants Charlie Manson exonerated and would like to see, Patricia Krenwinkel, Charles Watson, who's innocent, and Leslie Van Houten. I want to see them released from prison. And I want to see every governor who vetoed they've all been recommended for probation and release. All of them. I believe Charlie Watson has been recommended for release. And every governor from the buffoon that we have now, Gavin Newsom, to the buffoon gubernator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to the buffoon Ronald Reagan, who actually never had a chance to veto their sentences because he was too worried that he was going to be implicated in Sharon Tate's murder, since Judge Older allowed Ronald Reagan's look-alike pistol, the Buntline 22, long nose, to be admitted. I think Ronald Reagan was a little concerned that perhaps he'd be charged with the Sharon Tate murder. So he didn't have a lot of time to be vetoing any parole recommendations. It was too early in the process. But my point is, every governor after Ronald Reagan, they're all worthless, controlled tools. And if you don't understand that the district attorney's office and the sheriff's department and the big city municipal police are not controlled by CIA, then you're a very naive person. You're very naive. And CIA crimes are completely exempt. And that is why these crimes don't get solved. They don't get solved. Or they pick a scapegoat and then they blame him. And believe me, there were 1,000 scapegoats that could have been picked besides Charlie Manson. At least. I personally can think of a dozen myself. But Harold True would have been perfect. Harold True is way more guilty. He actually lived at the crime scene. He lived at the Waverly Drive crime scene. And he visited the crime scene murder site many times. And there are witnesses that could prove that. And whereas that's not true with Charlie Manson. They tried, but Charlie Manson never resided at the murder scene. Harold True did. Phil Kaufman didn't reside, but spent time. Linda Kasabian spent time. Her husband, Robert, who's in Rio de Janeiro, he spent time at the murder scenes. So they could have been scapegoats, right? They were throwaways. Harold True was a throwaway. Linda Kasabian's a throwaway. Robert Kasabian was a throwaway. Phil Kaufman's a throwaway. Harold True's a throwaway. His 3 other roommates, they're all throwaways. But none of them got charged in the Sharon Tate murder. But they could have been. Easily. Much more convincingly than Charlie Manson was. But you see, the thing is, if you're that naive to believe... And by the way, that's not even his real name. Charlie Manson, that's not his real name. Charlie Manson's real father is Colonel Walker Scott. So it should be Charlie Scott. But his mother, Charlie Manson's mother, was age 15, right? And then she got remarried to another man whose last name was Manson. And I'll be real specific, since I know all you skeptics out there. William Manson was the stepfather to Charlie Manson. And Charlie Scott, took William Manson's name, legally changed to Manson. And you should also know that the CBS Evil Eye, the people that brought you Walter Cronkite to tell you about all the Poppycock for years and years on television, okay, Walter Cronkite liar, liar, pants on fire. I forgot what I was going to say on that. But the point is that that company that brought you Walter Cronkite and his Poppycock, the William S. Paley, they hatched a subsidiary called Manson International in 1953. Nothing to do with Charlie Manson. Nothing to do with Charlie Scott. And you know what that was all about? You know what Manson International in Los Angeles, that was funded by Columbia Pictures, is to get into the porn industry. It was to get into the porn industry. So there's something about the name Manson that's about pornography, exploitation, San Fernando Valley, and murder most foul. So I agree that the name Manson is associated with satanic evil. That's clear. But just so you know, Charlie Manson, his real name is Scott. Charlie Scott. And he had no job, and he had no bank account, and he harmed no one, and he was beloved. Brian Wilson loved him. Dennis Wilson loved him. Mike Love loved him. Mike Love. Okay? Apparently, looks like Deidre Lansbury didn't have a problem with him, and neither did Grandpa Munster from the Munsters. That he used to have his children babysat by Susan Atkins and Patricia Krenwinkel and Mary Bruner, who had Charlie Manson's baby boy. All right, so anyway, that's my point, people, is, the next best thing, if you're not good at algebra and calculus and polynomials and the algebraic quadratic formula, if you don't know how to break down polynomials and you can't compute derivatives, then the next best thing is to have real life experience. And it needs to be a broad range of experience. Unfortunately, most people don't have a broad range. When I mean broad range, you need to have a banking background, you need to have an accounting background, you need to have a military industrial weapons background, which would mean national laboratories like Lawrence Livermore Laboratory or Los Alamos Lab, or weapons labs like Fort Detrick, Maryland, or Edgewood in Maryland, okay, or at Fort Baker and Fort Cronkite in Sausalito, or at the Presidio and Letterman Hospital had a bioweapons laboratory, or you need to be today sophisticated with neuroscience, and there's a neuroscience center at UCLA Medical Center. There's one at University of California, San Francisco. It's called the Sadler Center, Neuroscience, where they cooked Robin Williams' brains before he got garroted, either deliberately on purpose, murdered, or suicided. And they have something like that at University of California, Irvine. I'm sure they got them at most campuses now. Neuroscience is where it's at, right? Everything to do with nanotechnology, neuroscience, MK Ultra punking you, restructuring your brain, and pretty soon people aren't going to be talking about the Manson case anymore. I mean, does anyone talk about the Abraham Lincoln assassination? No, they don't. And that never got resolved. And someday we're not going to talk about John Kennedy. We're not going to talk about Robert Kennedy, which we already don't talk about that. And at some point, we're not going to talk about Sharon Tate anymore, who's just a John Benet Ramsey beauty queen whose father was a colonel in Army intelligence. Just like John Benet Ramsey's father was a executive vice president for Lockheed Martin, whose father assisted in building the airport for North Fox Island, which is like a Jeffrey Epstein, little St. James in the Caribbean. We had North Fox Island in Lake Michigan. Yeah, it was only operated during the summertime for a boys' camp. You just fly the boys in for boys' camp. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Hit the like or subscribe. Talk to you soon.